Alright, this video is about the KTM Freeride EXE, and it's literally everything you need to know. This is going to be a pretty long video, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up into multiple parts. I don't know how many parts that's going to be yet because I don't know how long it's going to be, but if you guys want to see all the parts, make sure you hit subscribe and the notification bell because I'm going to release them maybe a day or so apart. So if you want to know what the rest of the video is about, like and subscribe. If you're watching this later, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the links to the other videos in the description, or you can wait till the end of the video and I will put the next video in the series in the end cards. So without further ado, let's check out the Freeride EXE. Alright, so with me here today I have my beautiful 2020 Freeride EXE. There is some pun intended, it's not so beautiful anymore, it's looking a little beat up. But we're going to change that hopefully pretty soon. So what I'm going to do in this video is basically start from head to toe. I'm going to go over everything about this bike, literally from the first knobby all the way to the last knobby. I'm going to talk about it in stock form a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the modifications that I've done to it and the modifications that you may want to do to it to make it suit the needs that you have. First things first, you can see that I do not have the stock tires on here. And there's nothing actually wrong with the stock tires. They were made specifically for the Freeride, and so they're really good for what the bike was designed for originally, and so I have no beef against the stock tires. I changed them because I don't really ride the bike the way that it was designed for. So I have on here, I have at the moment a Dunlop Geomax, and it's a soft terrain tire, and I ride a little bit more kind of motocross type applications. So this is better suited for me. The stock tires are a trials type tire, and so what was happening in me in the high speed stuff is that it was just getting a lot of tire roll. Just means that the sidewalls were a little too soft in the tire, so when I get going around the corner, you know, the tire rolls over in the corner a little bit more, and I can get kind of a wallery effect. That said, I'm gonna segue into the way the bike handles and why I did that. The bike does carry the weight up high, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in this video and describing things because I want to really go head to toe. But the bike carries the weight up high, and so with the weight on the top, when you start cornering it at speed, it tends to like to roll tires over a little bit. It can also push the front end, which will segue into a whole bunch of other things. The setup on this thing is really, really very specific for the way that I want to ride it, and I tried to kind of work out all the drawbacks of the extra weight from the electric. Most people think that electric bikes are light. That's not true. This bike weighs as much as basically any other KTM bike. It just has a smaller chassis. So when it has the smaller chassis, it's able for people to touch the ground a little bit better, and it's very mellow power in mode 1, and so you can teach beginners.
Doesn't it make you want to just tear off somewhere?
Yeah. So it has a lot of great beginner qualities, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, it's not light when you go to dump it over or when you go to pick it up, like if you were to put a child on the thing. So if you ride motocross or cross-country style conditions, maybe even some enduro stuff, the tires just in general, I will say, you know, you might want to switch them out. The stock tires are good, especially the rear. It's a hybrid trials tire. I think it works very, very well. It's a gummy compound and things like that. I'm going to go turn around here to the other side. Next component we'll go over is the brakes. So the brakes are basically borrowed from the KTM 85, and a lot of people really, really complain about the brakes. Yes, they are worth complaining about a little bit. So the calipers and stuff are not really strong enough for a bike of this weight, where the you know, 85 SX weighs like, I don't know, 80 pounds less than this thing. Don't quote me on those numbers, but just a guess off the top of my head. They have less grab, so you have to modulate them a lot more to slow down a bike at this speed, or the ability to go this fast with this much weight. So if you're in slow speed conditions like the bike was originally designed for, the brakes are completely fine unless you were to go down big downhills and overheat them or something. I've never had a problem with the brakes overheating. I ride this thing quite aggressively. The brakes in general are okay. If I had the choice, yes, I would have the full, Brembo brakes from the units that, the full-size units that KTM makes. But there's sufficient power. They just don't have a lot of great feel. It's just kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but they're not awesome brakes, but they are sufficient.
Nice. Dude, these are badass, huh?
Yeah, thing's fun, isn't it?
You can ride this in your backyard.
I do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the problems that people have with the brakes is that they let the fluid get old in them. They get hot more often because you're on them, because they're less powerful than, say, a full-size bike's brakes. And the other thing they do is nobody does maintenance on these things properly. So if you're out riding in the mud or you're spraying chemicals on your bikes and stuff and you're contaminating these pads, you need to take apart the brakes, not completely apart. You don't need to disassemble everything, but you need to remove the pads and clean everything up and change the fluid more often in these brakes. So that's just the way it is. You can afford to get the big bike brake kits for it, then I would recommend you do that. But the stock brakes are sufficient, especially for beginner level riders. I do proper maintenance on mine quite often, and they seem to work very well. If you're wondering what these are no-mar wheel weights, and I will give you links to descriptions to everything that I've done to this bike down below. So if you're curious about anything, and I'll probably even put a timeline there, you'll be able to find these specific things. These are just to balance the wheels. They're opposite of the rim lock, so that when I'm going down the road or something on this thing, it's not hum, and hopping the tire. So it's just something I do. Yes, I do it on dirt bikes. I know it seems weird. I don't really care your thoughts. I do it on my bikes. I'll go over the wheel in general here now. So in general, the wheels seem to be of actually a pretty decent build quality. I've got 42 hours on this bike, 41 and a half, I guess, technically. And I finally just tightened the spokes on these things basically at hour 40. I've aired it off lots of big jumps.
Small jump.
That's perfect, though.
Yeah. Good timing.
And they're still in true. They were getting a decent amount of looseness to them when I snugged them up. I guess KTM wheels are kind of known for loosening up more than other wheels. I don't really know if that's true or not, but that's what people say. I've never had a problem with it personally, but anyway, the wheels have been holding up. They haven't come out of true or anything off of big jumps, and they are littler wheels than, say, the big bikes. So like the 85 SX uses probably the same spoke diameter, obviously not the same rim diameter because this is a 21, but the build quality of the wheels are pretty good. It's equivalent to a motocross bike in the 1990s. It doesn't have the big huge burly spokes like you have nowadays on, let's say, a 125cc bike, or I guess it'd be a 250F or whatever, but they seem to be holding up good. I actually have no flat spots in the front, which I'm quite surprised about because I hit rocks on this thing all the time at speed. And so the wheel quality, the wheel build seems to be pretty good. It seems to be sufficient for this bike. So the next component that we got is the suspension. And I'll go to this side a little bit. The suspension on this bike, when it comes stock, is very soft, and it's very bouncy. That makes sense for the slow speed terrain that it was designed for. Entry level riders on single track or easy double track, and trying to bounce a thing over rocks like trials bikes, it makes sense for the stock suspension to be like that. I don't ride this bike in those conditions, rarely ever. kind of am, I did some heavy upgrades to my suspension. I'm not going to go into those upgrades in this video because I already have a video about that, but I'll briefly touch on what I did. Basically, I stiffened up the spring rates all the way around on the bike dramatically. I don't remember the exact rates that are in the bike from the factory, but I think they're 46 or 48s. I have 54s in this bike, and I also completely gutted the internals of this thing and had it revalved for motocross type applications. So my forks are a little bit different than the forks that you're going to find on other bikes, because there's only 2 of these bikes, or 3 now I guess, that have this suspension system. So if you want to know more about the suspension and how to upgrade it, go see that video that I'll link down below. My forks now have compression clickers on both sides on the bottom, which is not at all how they come from the factory. There's no clicker on the bottom from the factory. And I have rebound clickers on the top, which there's 1 rebound and 1 compression on the factory fork. That's how the forks are set up now on my bike. That's not how they will come from the factory. They are your typical 43mm Explorer fork. They're sort of sufficient for what the bike is designed for, but they weren't sufficient for my needs. So I have the suspension upgraded.